Trades have been made, draft picks have been selected, and free agents have been signed. And now we can look towards the 2024 NHL season to see where each team might end up placing, who will make the playoffs, who will miss, and who will ultimately win the Stanley Cup in 2024. But which teams do I see doing well and bad? Well, watch till the end to see how I think your team will do. And hit that subscribe button if you're new for more hockey content just like this all throughout the year. You guys won't want to miss a thing. Now we're going to go division by division, and let's start out today with the Pacific to see which teams will finish through 1 through 8 and which teams will end up making the playoffs as well in the Pacific. We're going to start here with the number 1 spot, which to me is between 3 teams, Edmonton, LA, and Vegas, right at the very top. To me, those will be the 3 teams really battling it out, and I can see all 3 having number 1 positions throughout points in the season. But I think the team that will end up finishing at number 1 will be the Edmonton Oilers, and I predict them to finish with 110 points on the year. To me, there might be some big differences. I think that goaltending will be a little bit better. Hopefully, Jack Campbell will be back to at least an average level, but having Matthias Ekholm there for the full season is huge. And even though they've lost a little bit of depth, I still think they'll be really good in the regular season and will still do a very good job there. Plus, we could see some more trade element acquisitions as well, but I think they will finish strong with 110 points there, just above what they were at this last year. Now going on to number 2 in the division, again, between Vegas and LA, I just have the Vegas Golden Knights getting this spot with 106 points, just barely. And even though there might not be as much success as they had last year in the regular season, I still think they're going to do very solidly. They've kept most of that cup roster intact. That defense and forward group is almost exactly the same besides Riley Smith. And even though they might be a little bit downgraded, I would say in the defense, of course, with players like Martinez and Pietrangelo getting a little bit older, we might see the effects of that immediately. I still think the Knights are going to be really solid next year, and maybe we'll see Logan Thompson in that full-time starter role alongside Adin Hill as well. Now let's go on to number 3. Just behind Vegas, I have the LA Kings with 105 points, right there banging on the door. I could see there being a situation where LA gets past Vegas, but to me, the goaltending is the big questions. At least with Vegas, you got Adin Hill and Logan Thompson. With LA, it's Phoenix Copley, David Rittich, and Cam Talbot. To me, those are not really for sure qualities and candidates to be your guys in net. And you also combine that with a little bit less depth this year than they had last because of the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade and some of the guys they've lost on D. And I feel like for LA, they'll still be great, and maybe not at the number 1 spot like they would have hoped. Now let's go on to the one team in the Pacific in the wild card spot, and I have the Seattle Kraken taking this up. Now, I see them being slightly lesser than they were this last year, mostly because I feel like Philip Grubauer might be a little bit less than he was this last year. He was horrible back in 2022, had a big rebound season in 2023. I think we'll kind of see him even it out a little bit this next year. But I think also for Seattle, we might see some issues with the depth, losing players like Daniel Sprong and Morgan Geekie, and I feel like for them, Karlsson Suzuki will also be a big loss on that defense, even if they did bring in Brian Dumoulin. To me, I think they'll still be a playoff team. They'll still be pretty solid in that West, maybe not as good and just slightly below last year. Next up, we're going to go on to 5 through 6, and to me, you got Calgary and Vancouver. This is really going to be an interesting race. Who finishes above? Will it be the Canucks? Will it be the Flames? I think you can make really good arguments for both. As of right now, I'm going to have the Vancouver Canucks in that 5th spot with 93 points on the season. For me, Thatcher Demko will hopefully be healthy next year, and I think he'll have a huge rebound year. Elias Pettersson is continuing to be one of the best centers in the league. Quinn Hughes will take those bigger next steps. And the team around him, I thought they made some good free agent acquisitions like Karlsson Suzuki that we mentioned before, but also players like Teddy Bluger I think will be solid for them. Ian Cole could be a little bit of a stabilizer on that defense. I think you'll see Philip Roenick as well, taking that next step, being on that full-time role with the Canucks this next year. I don't think they're going to be a playoff team, but I do have them being a little bit more improved than they were last year, which is a step, even if it might not be the step they want to take. Now going on to number 6, I have the Calgary Flames. They are, to me, a weird one to try to predict because I think for them, there's some things that will be downgraded, but some things will be upgraded. For instance, Jonathan Huberdeau is not going to be nearly as bad as he was last year, and a couple of those forwards will rebound for sure, but they do lose Tyler Toffoli and bring in Shredagovich, which I don't think is a good trade for them at all, at least when you exchange the players at hand there. The defense, though, is likely to rebound just a little bit, and maybe we'll see Jacob Markstrom get to an average level, but Markstrom to me needs to be amazing for the Flames to be in the playoff race. I don't quite see that, and I see the Flames also just having a few players that might be kind of out of it, like Noah Hannafin, like Mikael Backlund, that could be traded at the deadline, and that lessen their season overall with 88 points there. Now we're going to go to the bottom two. We all know them. We all love them. The Sharks and the Ducks. It really is just a toss-up who gets on that last place. But to me, at number 7, I had the Anaheim Ducks. This year, I see them finishing with 65 points on the year. Not being completely improved, not being all that amazing, still being near the bottom, but having some mild improvement. Maybe we'll see a John Gibson deal midway through, but for the most part, it'll be the improvement from some of the younger guys there. Hopefully, we'll see maybe a Zellweger take a next step, perhaps in that defense. We'll have to wait and see. And Alex Killorn, obviously, players like Graviteh will make them a little bit better, but still not near a contender or even in the average of the NHL, that's for sure. Then going into last place, I have the San Jose Sharks with 59 points here. To me, they're going to be in complete take mode, and I think we'll see a few trades as well throughout the year. Of course, Erik Karlsson, I assume, will be traded this offseason, and that trade comes into play here. I see Karlsson being traded before the season starts, and that being a massive blow to really everything in San Jose. Because of that, I have them finishing with 59 points and being right down in the dumpster of the NHL. Next up, let's go into the Central Division that honestly might have some of my hottest takes of this video, and we're going to start out here at number 1 and go on to my favorite team, and I trust me, it's not biased, okay? I have the Dallas Stars, and I have them finishing with 105 points on the year. I think being the lowest points for any division winner here, and being right up there neck and neck with number 2 as well. But to me, the Stars, I think, are just in a great position for regular season success, even though I think there should be some changes on that defense. The full group is stacked. I think players like Duchesne, Steele, and Craig Smith, to me, the depth there is fantastic, and the top end is fantastic, and I think the defense will survive for the regular season. Ottinger will have a great season there, and I think the Stars will have some really big regular season, hopefully playoff success as well, will come to follow. Now at number 2, I have the Colorado Avalanche right behind the Stars with 104 points. I see the depth being a little bit downgraded, and even some of that top end. Losing Landeskog is brutal for sure, and replacing them with players like Drouin and Ryan Johansson, losing JT Compher, of course, is brutal for that 4 group too. To me, I think for the Avs, their 4 group is in a weird position. Their goaltending, I think it will still be good, and that defense is still loaded, but I feel like they might have a little bit of a step back this next year, at least in the regular season. Then going on to number 3, here's where we start to get into kind of the Wild West, because I think there are 3 teams here that could honestly fight for any of these positions. You got the Jets, you got the Preds, and you got the Minnesota Wild. And I know it's crazy to say that, but I feel like the Minnesota Wild have lost a lot of depth this offseason and haven't really replaced it with much of anything. Pat Maroon was their big offseason addition, and I think they needed a lot more than that, especially with the cap space they have now. They don't have a lot of cap space in the future, but right now they got about $8 million, and they have a lot to work with that they just really haven't used. But still at number 3, I'm going to have the Minnesota Wild here. I still think they'll be fine. I think they'll get 99 points. Maybe not as good as they would like it, but I still think that goaltending is going to be good with Gustafsson and Fleury. I still think that defense could kind of tread water a little bit. That top 6 obviously is kind of in flux, where you have Joel Eriksson Ek, but you have Ryan Hartman as really the first line center now. But you still have those great wingers in Kaprizov and Zuccarello and Boldy, and a lot of options and a lot of weapons there. Hopefully Boldy is 100% healthy throughout the year. I think Minnesota will be fine. I think they'll be solid. But again, because of those cap constraints and really a lackluster offseason, I see them finishing at number 3. Now, here's where we get into the hot takes of this video as well, because at number 4, I'm gonna surprise you a little bit with this pick. Are you guys ready? I don't know if you're ready for this one. At number 4, I have the Nashville Predators, and I'm just gonna come out and say it. Yeah, I could look like an absolute idiot for this, probably do already. But I think the Preds are in a fascinating position. I think the Andrew Brunette hiring is brilliant. What he was doing in Florida, what he was doing in New Jersey, he is a brilliant coach. And I think for Nashville, he's the exact type of coach that can get more out of Nashville. Hopefully Philip Forsberg is 100% healthy. I'm really relying on that. But I think Ryan O'Reilly, if he gets back to that form that he had with Toronto, could still be a good position with that first line center. You got a ton of prospects and a ton of younger players that are just going to do so well this next year, like Cody Glass, Novak. You got Luke Evangelista, you got Philip Tomasino. A lot of depth with the youth coming up. I think that'll be big for Nashville. Their defense is underrated. I love the Luke Schenn acquiring as well. And UC Saros, to me, is in a position to win the Vezina this next year. I think he could be that good. I think he could will Nashville to the playoffs. I know it's crazy to say, but I think the Preds are a playoff team, and I know it's a hot take. I know people aren't going to say it, but I have a lot of belief in this Preds roster and the coaching as well. And I think the coaching change will do wonders for them. They were underrated this last year. I see them taking those next steps. Now, coming in at number 5, missing the playoffs, I have the Winnipeg Jets. And here's the thing. On paper, I think the Jets are a much better roster than the Preds. But I think the culture and the actual coaching goes a long way here with Nashville compared to Winnipeg. I think for the Jets, they have a lot of players there that are kind of on their way out. Mark Scheifele, of course, Connor Hellebuck. You got players there that might not be traded yet, but kind of feel like they're out the door already. Kind of feel like they have one foot out the door already. And I feel like for the Jets, having that in the room is a big distraction to have. And even though the roster might be good, that 4 group is really interesting heading into next year. And of course, Connor Hellebuck is still Connor Hellebuck. I feel like there might be times where it kind of fails them a little bit, having those big top players just kind of out the door already. And I feel like that might lead to some losses that they might not want to have. I give them 94 points in the year. I still see them being solid, but not being enough to make the playoffs. Now going on to number 6, and I told you the hot takes were not going to stop with this division. At number 6, I'm just going to come out and say it, all right? I have the Arizona Coyotes. Now, I know this division could be the one that bites me in the butt the most, all right? I'm prepared for that. I am ready to take it in. But to me, I think the Coyotes are in a really unique position. I think they'll get 81 points this next year. We know they were trying to make a much better roster for this next season. I think they've accomplished that, getting Zucker, getting Kerfoot. And I think the roster altogether is really interesting. They got a really young defense, but with some promising young names. That top 6 looks really good now, and you got some really interesting youth coming up. Maybe Dylan Guenther is a full-time player there next year. Barrett Hayton, I see, taking those next steps. Keller and Schmaltz are still fantastic. And I think Karel Veljmeka can do some really big things for the Coyotes as the starter there. We'll see what happens. I think the Coyotes are in a really interesting position, and of course, Dreger as their head coach, I think is really underrated as a head coach. I think they will take that next step this next year. I mean, 81 points. They're still not going to be a playoff team, but I still see them being solid. Now, just right behind them, I have the St. Louis Blues, and I have them finishing with 79 points. To me, there's still some big problems. That defense is just mid. I mean, we can beat around the bush as much as we like. They got some names, all right? They got names, but they're not good. They're not that great, and they're not as good as they're paying them. And you look at that goaltending too, Jordan Binnington is just not good either. I'm sorry. It's just been a fact since 2019. He's not going to turn that page. I'm fully convinced of it now. I picked him as a rebound candidate for like 3 straight years now, and he hasn't done a dang thing. The Blues are going to 79 points. They'll still be okay, but not as much improvement as they'd like. And then we're going to go on to last place. Of course, it will be the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, they won't be horrible. They'll still be horrible. I mean, a little bit horrible with 60 points. But I do like the additions they made, like Taylor Hall, of course, being a part of Connor Bedard's line. They're going to be bad, but they're not going to be horribly bad. And they're going to have options around Connor Bedard, which really is all that matters here. Now, let's go on to the Metro Division here, which has a lot of teams trying to contend for those wild card spots, especially. We're going to go right up to the very top here at number 1, and I'm going to start out here with the New Jersey Devils. I see them finishing with 115 points on the year. To me, I think they will be the team that wins the President's Trophy. Re-signing Brott and Meyer was huge for them. I don't think the goaltending will hold them back too much. That defense looks stellar. That top 6 looks stellar. The depth looks great too. I think New Jersey is going to be awesome and rocking next year all throughout the season. Now going on to number 2, though, I'm going to go on here to the Carolina Hurricanes, who I think will finish with 108 points. Not quite on New Jersey's level, but I still think the Canes will be great in the regular season like they always are. I mean, I have problems with them and how their team is built and how I think they can translate that on to the playoffs. And we've seen problems time and time again with that lack of top-end scoring in the playoffs. Now the goaltending can sometimes fail them, but I don't think that'll be a problem in the regular season. I see them finishing with 108 points there. Now moving on to number 3, though, and a team that could potentially even miss the playoffs next year. I still have them in the race, though, and that is the New York Rangers. I have them finishing with 104 points this next season and still being quite solid. I see some rebounding years for players like Shesterkin in the regular season at least, Keandre Miller perhaps, and we'll see if those young guys can finally take those big next steps in being true amazing point producers. I think for the Rangers, Elliotte is an interesting hiring. We'll see how it works out. I just gotta say, do not be surprised if the Rangers miss the playoffs somehow, because I just have that weird, sometimes you have a weird feeling in your gut about teams. The Rangers are in an interesting spot right now. We'll see where they finish. But now going on to number 4 here, and the team in the Metro that'll make the wild card spot. I only have one team in the Metro making the wild card, And to me, I think that will be the Pittsburgh Penguins. I see them finishing with 98 points in the year. Now, of course, if you saw the San Jose Sharks prediction, I saw the Sharks trading Erik Karlsson to the Penguins. That's what I'm expecting to happen. If that does happen, I mean, that's going to be a monstrous thing to see for that Penguins defense. It's going to make their offense so much better in every way. And even though I still have some concerns with Tristan Jarry, I still have some concerns with that depth for Pittsburgh, it has been made a little bit better. You have gotten acquisitions like Lars Eller this last offseason, so we'll see how that works. I think they're going to be in a good spot, though, and we'll be back in the playoffs this next year. Now we'll go on to number 5 here in a team that just misses, in my opinion, and that'll be the New York Islanders. Now, to me, Ilya Sorokin was a god last year. Was unbelievable and had unbelievable goals, hit above expected numbers, carried that team in every way. I don't quite see that happening this next year. I see kind of a Igor Shesterkin of last year kind of happening to Sorokin this year. A little bit of a step back, but still fantastic. But the defense has improved a little bit. Bo Horvat being there for the full season will be huge. I just feel like there's some problems with that top end scoring. There wasn't really anything that was added for the Islanders, and I think they could have used maybe a little bit extra juice. Still, though, they'll be solid. We'll be in the race, but I think just behind it at 95 points. Now going on to number 6 here, and you might expect the Washington Capitals, but I got the Columbus Blue Jackets. Now, to me, I think the Blue Jackets will be the most improved team in the league this next year. I'm pretty sure. I mean, I could go through of them all, but I think the most points gained will be the Blue Jackets this next year. I have them at 87 points. I see a few things turning around, not as much to get into the playoffs, but I see them being in the race. I mean, that goaltending will hopefully be better. We'll see if Elvis Merzlikins can finally turn that page again and get back to that level that he was at just a few years ago. That defense, I think, is in a good spot to upgrade. David Jurich will be huge for them as a rookie, but of course, you got the additions of Provorov and Severson, which I think will be an interesting spot once Werenski is healthy. They'll give them some more flexibility there. And of course, you got players like Adam Fantilli being on that top 6. I still think that 4 group on the top end will need some work. But hey, Columbus has a lot more options this year, a lot more weapons. And I mean, Mike Babcock is going to make them a good team. Whether there'll be some major repercussions of that, we'll have to see. But he'll at least make them a team that is worth respecting. Now going on to number 7 here, though, I'm going to go with the Washington Capitals. Just like the Rangers, they're a team that I'm just not really sure where to place. I mean, they've had players like Evgeny Kuznetsov requesting trades that haven't gotten traded. Just a lot of players in flux right now, and I'm not really sure where to place them. Of course, hopefully we'll see a full and healthy year out of Tom Wilson, which will be huge for them. John Karlsson as well, which will make the team better in those ways. I just have some problems with the depth on both the defense and the 4 group. I think for Darcy Kemper, we'll see if this is the year that he can take a bigger next step again. I think for Washington, though, I think a lot of it just comes down to depth and just those guys getting older as well in that core. We'll see how much that affects things. I just feel like for Washington, they're a team that could have some growing pains, or I guess some old pains this next year. Now going on to that 8th spot, though, it will be the Philadelphia Flyers. Nobody's kidding themselves. How bad they will be, though, will be in question. I think they will be pretty okay to start things out. Their 4 group is quite all right, and if Carter Hart's still there, then I think they'll be okay. I just think they'll have some major surgery on our trade deadline time, likely getting rid of players like Carter Hart, like Scott Laughton, like Travis Konechny. That will be a big surgery for them, and I think that'll result in a lot of losses afterwards, and I see them finishing with 63 points, being near the bottom, being where they should be in Denny Brier's rebuild. Now let's move on to the last division here in the Atlantic, and we're just going to start things off at number 1. I think this is the Toronto Maple Leafs division to lose right now. I see them finishing with 113 points on the year. I've learned to never doubt the Leafs in the regular season. Never doubt the Leafs in the regular season. We'll see if they're able to get over that second round hump now with players like Reeves, like Bertuzzi, like Domi. Not sure about the John Klingberg thing, but we'll see. The Leafs are in a unique spot, though. We'll see if those expectations are going to be able to be risen, but I think number 1 should be their spot with just how kind of average the rest of the division is looking. Now, at number 2, because of that wide openness, I still think the Bruins are going to take this second spot. Now, I see some people like saying they would go out of the playoffs because of the Bergeron and Krejci departures, and those are going to be monumental for them still. I still see them finishing of 104 points. I still see them being good. That defense is still elite to me. That goaltending is still elite. And you still have some great players in that 4 group, like Pastrnak, like Marchand. And I think players like Zajac and Coyle will be good enough at center. They could even go for a center of the trade deadline as well this next year. Maybe Mark Scheifele is their guy in that spot. We'll see. But I think the Bruins will still be in a fine spot. Won't be as good, nearly as good as last year, but will still be a playoff team. Next up at number 3 here in the division, I got the Florida Panthers here finishing with 99 points. And this is what I mean with kind of the spread of this division, because after Toronto and Boston, it kind of just gets in that mucky middle. With Florida, I don't think they're going to be nearly as good of a regular season team as they are a playoff team, but I still think they'll be fine. I'll still think they'll be good and will still make the playoffs. And, you know, considering they're losing Montour and Ekblad for the first couple months of the season, that's still a miraculous feat considering where they were in the regular season last year with those two guys almost all year. So to me, I think with Florida, those are still good steps to take, and I think the goaltending will be good this next year as well in the regular season, not just in the playoffs. I think that'll take them some big next steps with Bobrovsky and hopefully Spencer Knight there as well. I think for them, the defense will adapt, and the forward group will adapt well as on top of that too, and I like some of the additions like Evan Rodrigues. We'll see how Nico Mikkola and OEL end up doing there too. I think they'll be solid throughout. Now going on to number 4, number 5, number 6, and number 7, because here is where it is going to be wild. Here is where it's going to be wacky. Now, here's the thing. I have one wildcard team in the Metro. I have one wildcard team in the Atlantic. And this is the problem, is that I feel like number 4 is going to be maybe the most important position in the NHL next year in the Atlantic Division. Who gets number 4 is going to be all up for the cards. But to me, in the end, the team that will end up being the playoff team in the Atlantic is going to end up being the Tampa Bay Lightning. I have them finishing with 96 points on the year, just barely being a playoff team, and it's held up by their superstars like Vasilevsky, Point, Hedman, Kucherov, Stamkos, of course, players like Chiarelli, Hagel as well, also holding up their end of the bargain. To me, Tampa has lost a lot of depth. A lot, especially in the forward group, and to me, I think that will be detrimental to their regular season success. Not totally apocalyptic, but I still think that'll kind of lessen them in that playoff race. And I think it'll be a battle just to get in for the Bulls this next year, unless Vasilevsky pulls out another Vezina season. We'll see what happens. But I think Tampa is just barely going to make the playoffs, just barely going to be in there. And now that leaves the next 3. And to me, these are all 3 teams that have done some interesting things, have improved in ways, haven't gone the full mile, in my opinion, to be the playoff team I'm predicting for this next year. And that's a little bit of a shame, because there's one team I will say here in these next 3 that I'm really disappointed by a little bit of some of their additions this offseason. But first up, let's go on to number 5, and this is where I have the Ottawa Senators. I see them finishing with 93 points in the year, taking another step, but not a big enough step for their liking. I see it being solid. Chychrun for the whole season will be huge for them. Forsberg, I think, will be definitely a boost for their goaltending. To me, though, their forward group is incomplete. Sure, Kubalik is a nice addition to have with the DeBrincat deal, but I don't think he's necessarily the answer if you're trading DeBrincat. He wasn't the top 6 forward I think they absolutely needed, and to me, I think that's a big hole for the Sens. Also, I think for them, their goaltending isn't completely set in stone. I mean, Forsberg has shown good points, shown good moments, but we'll see if that consistency is there. I think for Ottawa, they'll be one of the closest teams to the playoffs, but just barely missing in the end, unfortunately. Now going on to number 6 here, though. Next up, I have the Detroit Red Wings. Now, I don't see them, just like Ottawa, taking that playoffs next step, but I do see the Red Wings being much better next year. Hopefully that goaltending will be a little more consistent, but really the big thing is that defense. If that defense is a lot better, then Detroit's going to be in a much better position. I don't know how likely that is. I don't love the Justin Holl addition. He's fine. I don't know how good Ben Sherrod is going to be next year. Probably not that much. Now you do, of course, add Alex DeBrincat, which will be huge for that top 6. Huge for that power play. Huge for the top end scoring, and that's exactly who they need to add. We'll see if this is the year they make the playoffs. I'm going to say next year, though, is the year they really take that next step. Now going on to number 7, and this is the team that I'm kind of disappointed by a little bit, and that is the Buffalo Sabres. As of right now, I have them finishing with 86 points, and let me explain this, because they were of 91 points last year. They took that huge step exactly like we wanted to see, and for a lot of people, they're a team that will take the next step again and make the playoffs. But here's the thing. Even though they made some additions on that defense like Clifton and Erik Johnson, I think it's just a pile of meh. It's a pile of, okay, those are nice additions, but I don't think they're going to completely fix those defensive issues. I also think for them, Jack Quinn being out for the first couple months of the year is big. It is huge. That is a great player that was big for them this last year, and I think that offensive impact is going to be missed. I think there might be a couple players as well that maybe have a little bit lesser years, like maybe a Jeff Skinner perhaps. They're still going to have their offensive superstars for sure, and that's still going to be great. Rasmus Dahlin's still going to take that next step. But then you go into that goaltending, and I love Devon Levi. I absolutely love him, but having Eric Comrie as your tandem goalie is worrying to me, to say the least. He's never played more than 19 games in a single season in his NHL career, and I don't see how he's going to be even backup quality for Levi specifically. He could be backup quality for Connor Hellebuyck, but a Devon Levi who's entering his rookie season and needs some padding, needs, I think, especially throughout the course of the season, some time to breathe. Eric Comrie does not give him that. And to me, I think that'll be a major problem in this next year. If they had I'm not even asking for a Connor Hellebuyck, just somebody to stop that gap. To me, Levi could be a Calder candidate, could be the #1 guy for me next year. As of right now, I think Comrie being his backup is a detriment. It's a negative. And unless that changes, unless Comrie is a incredible game-playing goalie, which I don't really quite see next year, to me, I think that'll be something that kind of haunts Buffalo in the end. We'll see. They still might be incomplete. There still might be more trades on the table. But as of right now, missing Quinn, the defense not being completely fixed, in my opinion, that goaltending tandem being unproven, to say the least, kind of puts me out of the Buffalo hype, at least for this next year. That could bite me, but we'll end up seeing. Then at number 8, of course, I mean, it's going to be the Montreal Canadiens. I have them finishing with 62 points on the year. We'll see. They're going to be bad next year, and in Atlantic, they're going to be bad no matter what. I think there will be some improvements in the youth, and that's really all you can ask for. But the Montreal Canadiens aren't going to be contending anytime soon. They know that. They're building for that, and they'll be in that top 5 next year, which is exactly where they should be anyway. So for the people keeping track at home, for the first round matchups, it'll be Oilers versus Preds, Golden Knights versus Kings, Stars versus Kraken, Avalanche versus Wild in the West. As for the East, Devils versus Lightning, Hurricanes versus Rangers, Leafs versus Penguins, and Bruins versus Panthers. Some good rematches, some good new ones as well. Now on to my predictions for the conference finals. I have Oilers versus Kraken, which might be a little bit of an unconventional one. I see the Oilers getting past some of their demons. The Kraken, though, had some good experience in last year's playoffs, beat the Avs in a miraculous underdog story, and put it to the Stars pretty well. I think some of that youth got some good experience, and I think this next year they could take that next step, and you know, the depth that they have, the defense they have still. I think for the Kraken, a lot of that will come for some playoff success too. As for the East, I got the Devils versus the Panthers. The Devils, I think, are just going to be an unstoppable force. If that goaltending is able to hold, to me, New Jersey is loaded in so many different positions. And just like Seattle last year, for New Jersey, for some of the younger players like Jack Hughes, I think that last playoff experience was huge for them, getting that taste and, you know, going through those struggles, going through some growing pains. I think this next year is going to be huge for them. And then Florida, once they're healthy, once they're all back together, that defense is going to look great. I think that goaltending will still be fantastic. And I think Florida's in a position to really do some damage next year if they're still able to make it into the playoffs. As for the Stanley Cup final, I have it being the Oilers versus the Devils. Oilers taking that next step, Devils as well. And to me, I think this will be the Stanley Cup final for 2024, which is crazy to say 2024 in a sentence like this, but here we are. But I see both of these teams taking that next step. Oilers having a relatively easy path going against Seattle. I think that'll be a matchup they do like a lot. For New Jersey, I think they'll just be able to get past Florida, even though they have a lot of toughness, a lot of grit, especially on that defense. I think for New Jersey, that full group is going to be unbelievable. And I think as well, we could see some good matchups on the special teams. I think New Jersey is in a unique spot there. And I think they will face off between the Oilers in that cup final. As for who will actually win the Stanley Cup in 2024, I think it will be the New Jersey Devils. I think that full group is going to be unbelievable in 2024, is going to get them over the top, and they're going to really break out in a big way. And I think for a lot of the playoffs as well, the goaltending will come up big. I think Vitek Vanacek can have some big moments there. That defense, I think, is going to be really underrated next year. We're going to see Siegenthaler, Marino as more of the defensive guys, sure, take a lot of that responsibility, but I think they're going to be great in those positions, and they're going to win the Stanley Cup in 2024, which I know, bold, hot take, but I got NJ, I got the Devils for the Stanley Cup. But those are my early 2024 standings and Stanley Cup playoff predictions. Let us know down in the comments down below. What do you agree? What do you disagree with? How do you see your team doing in the 2024 season? And who do you see ultimately winning the Stanley Cup as well? Let us know all your friggin' thoughts down below for this mega video. Of course, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell if you haven't already. Share the video with all the hockey fans you guys know online and get that video out there, get this video out there, and click on this card right here for all my hockey rankings content right in one playlist. My name is Nathan. I hope you've had a fantastic day. Make sure you drink some water for me, get some rest because you deserve it, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day, and goodbye.